In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, October 10th, here in South Korea. Israel declares war on the Palestinian militant group Hamas following the latter's unprecedented attack in both size and scale this past weekend that has since led to some 1,500 losses of lives on both sides and 150 hostages by Hamas. Meanwhile, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix are granted waivers from US chip restrictions that look to limit their business operations in neighboring China. And Harvard professor Claudia Goldin wins this year's Nobel Prize in Economics for her research into the reasons behind discrepancies in gender earnings and employment rates over the course of time. We start in Israel, where over 1,500 people have lost their lives amid violent confrontations between Israeli forces and the Palestinian militant group Hamas following its shocking onslaught this past Saturday. Our Choi Soo-young has the latest.
Since Saturday's surprise attack in Israel by the Palestinian militant group Hamas in Israel, there have been over 1,500 deaths on both sides. On Monday local time, the government press office of the Israeli announced that more than 800 people have died in the Hamas attacks, with over 2,600 injured. Meanwhile, Israeli airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry, have led to more than 600 deaths. Hamas have also taken about 150 people hostage and is holding them in the Gaza Strip. Among the casualties and hostages, there are also citizens of the United States and the United Kingdom, France, Germany and Ukraine, among others. Following Hamas' attack on Saturday, the Security Cabinet of Israel has declared a total blockade of the Gaza Strip and announced a final retaliation.
Dear Israeli citizens, we started, and I emphasize we have only started to strike Hamas.
Israel has announced the mobilization of up to 300,000 reserve forces, and U.S. officials expect that Israeli forces will begin a ground operation in the Gaza Strip within 48 hours. Hamas has threatened to execute civilian hostage in retaliation for Israeli airstrikes. A Hamas spokesperson stated that they will execute one civilian hostage for each attack by Israel on civilian homes in the Gaza Strip without prior warning. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres strongly condemned Hamas's attacks on Israel while expressing concern about Israel's total blockade of the Gaza Strip. Currently, the South Korean government is closely monitoring the situation in Israel, and some of South Korea's long-term residents and travelers in Israel, totaling around 930 people, are expected to return home on direct flights by Korean Air on Wednesday, Korea time. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
And global oil markets are responding to the rampant violence in Israel. In fact, oil prices noted their highest daily surge since April 3rd on Monday local time. Prices of a U.S. benchmark West Texas Intermediate crude oil and global benchmark Brent crude both jumped more than 4%, with the West Texas settling at above $86 per barrel and the Brent closing at over $88 per barrel. Pundits fear the current confrontation between Israeli forces and Hamas may severely disrupt oil output from producers in the Middle East. Also, in related news, President Yoon Suk-yeol has shared concern over the escalating violence between Israel and Hamas turning into an all-out war. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, President Yoon claimed the possibility of a broader conflict cannot be dismissed as Iran and the Hezbollah support Hamas, while the West supports Israel. He also touched upon the possibility of rising global oil prices weighing on the economy and accordingly called for countermeasures to hold steady the cost of living and to ensure adequate access to energy this winter. President Yoon further urged the Foreign Ministry to ensure the safety of Koreans amid the ongoing violence in the Middle East. In other news, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix have been granted waivers from U.S. restrictions that look to limit their business operations in neighboring China. Now, this is according to the top office here, and our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young has details.
The United States has suspended restrictions indefinitely on South Korea's largest chip makers importing American semiconductor equipment to their factories in China as Seoul works to resolve its biggest bottlenecks in global trade. On Monday, Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Choi Sang-mok said the US government designated Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix's semiconductor plants in China as verified end users. This allows the two firms to import sensitive tech items for use in their Chinese chip factories without the need to obtain a permit each time.
This decision by the US government means that the biggest trade issue for Korean chipmakers has been resolved. This has also greatly alleviated uncertainties related to their factory operations and investments in China.
Last October, the US imposed new rules to restrict advanced computing and chip production gear from entering China to curb the growth of Beijing's chip industry and its stealing of technology. Samsung and SK Hynix had a one-year exemption, but Seoul has for months been pushing for an extension of that grace period, which was set to expire this month. Semiconductors last year made up almost a fifth of South Korea's exports. More than 40% of Samsung's NAND chips and half of SK Hynix's DRAM chips are produced at plants in China. While noting that other trade issues may arise in the future, Yoon's economic aide said Washington's waiver came about as Presidents Yoon and Joe Biden, since their first summit in May last year, have committed to close cooperation on high-tech supply chains while strengthening their bilateral alliance. Chair also projected optimism on Korean auto giant's green car sales in the US market, saying the Korean government has been helping them secure subsidies under Washington's Inflation Reduction Act, which sets out assembly and battery requirements that largely favor American firms with domestic manufacturing. Furthermore, amid various headwinds facing the Korean economy, Chair said the Yoon government boosted foreign direct investment to unprecedented levels, recording almost $24 billion from January to September, a rise of 11.3% on year. Greenfield investment in high-tech industries like chips and batteries, he said, are likely to help strengthen supply chains and create new jobs across the domestic economy. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The 21st National Assembly has launched its last parliamentary audit ahead of next April's general election. For 24 days starting on this Tuesday, 17 standing committees of the Assembly are inspecting over 790 government departments and agencies. The ruling and opposition parties are expected to clash during discussions on a series of controversial issues, including Japan's release of its Fukushima wastewater and allegations against Democratic Party chairman Lee Jae-myung. And across the border in North Korea, the regime's ruling Workers' Party marked its 78th founding anniversary on this Tuesday by touting its advances to becoming, quote, a world power. The party's official Rodong Sinmun newspaper claimed that its leader Kim Jong-un had, quote, exceptionally strengthened combat power over the past decade, and that the party would, quote, continue to win for the next thousands of millions of years. It also praised its past leaders, Kim Il-sung, who founded the party, and Kim Jong-il, who led it. The newspaper also noted the regime's recent constitutional amendment regarding the use of nuclear force, calling it yet another meaningful and important political achievement. In Afghanistan, the country is reeling in the aftermath of a tragic earthquake that has killed thousands as rescue authorities continue to work around the clock in search of survivors. Our An Sung-jin covers this calamity.
A 6.3 magnitude earthquake hit western Afghanistan with an epicenter in a rural area some 40 kilometers from the city of Herat on Saturday. The latest reports have put the death toll at almost 3,000, with thousands more injured.
I lost 4 members of my family. Every house has several dead. I don't want to live anymore. I've lost my soul. I don't know what to do or what to say.
Tens of thousands of people have been displaced as houses in villages and districts of Herat province were turned into rubble. Residents remained on alert until Monday, when periodic aftershocks continued to shake the area. The head of the World Health Organization emergency response said that women and children make up 2/3 of those admitted to hospital.
The earthquake happened in the morning where men were out of the houses. So majority of those who are injured and died are women and children, adding more pressure on women, adding more pressure on children, who are the most vulnerable groups inside Afghanistan.
A UN humanitarian coordinator on Saturday approved a $5 million emergency reserve allocation from the Afghanistan Humanitarian Fund.
We, along with our humanitarian partners, are now ramping up to the response. We've deployed assessment teams, and we are providing emergency shelter supplies, blankets, warm clothes, food.
Local officials say the death toll is likely to rise as search and rescue efforts continue. Afghanistan is frequently hit by earthquakes, as seen in June last year when the eastern part of the country was hit by a 5.9 magnitude quake, which resulted in over 1,000 deaths. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
This year's Nobel Prize for Economics was awarded to a Harvard professor who focused her research on revealing the reasons behind the gender wage gap targeting women in the workforce. Our Ising reports.
The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences announced Monday that it has awarded Harvard professor Claudia Goldin the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences for her work on women's employment and pay.
The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has decided to award Sveriges Riksbanks Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel 2023 to Professor Claudia Goldin, Harvard University, USA, for having advanced our understanding of women's labor market outcomes.
The 77-year-old lecturer in labor market history at Harvard University's work examined 200 years of data on the U.S. workforce, revealing how and why gender differences in earnings and employment rates changed over time. The Academy noted that her research has provided the first comprehensive account of women's earnings and labor market participation through the centuries, while showing the causes of change as well as the main sources of the remaining gender gap. Goldin's research showed that married women started to work less after the arrival of industrialization of the 1800s, but their employment picked up again in the 1900s as the service economy grew. She noted that while higher educational levels for women and the contraceptive pill accelerated change, the gender wage gap remained. She also concluded that while earning differences between men and women could be blamed on educational and career choices made at a young age, the current earnings gap was now largely due to the impact of having children. Goldin becomes just the third woman to receive the Nobel Economics Prize and the first to not share the honor with male colleagues. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, this past weekend, those here in the capital city were treated to a spectacular show of fireworks that sought to spread a sense of solidarity. Our Yoon shares some of those scenes.
Huge crowds of people gathered beneath the autumn sky. Breathtaking fireworks filled the canvas of the night at the Han River Park in Yeouido. Around 1 million people came together for the 2023 Seoul International Fireworks Festival over the weekend, with South Korea's government pledging safety as a priority. The festival was organized by Hanwha Group, and according to company officials, this year's event was the biggest ever, with over 400 LED firework firing drones taking part, and a record number of barges, each reportedly loaded with hundreds or even thousands of fireworks positioned on the river. Officials say around 102,000 fireworks were used. The event was supposed to feature 3 teams under the theme Lights of Tomorrow. However, a technical issue meant Poland had to withdraw, leaving Korea and China to put on a show. Team Korea embroidered the autumn sky with beautiful fireworks, creating unforgettable memories for audience members from a variety of countries. Breathtaking fireworks lit up the night sky, coordinated with a wide range of music, including a creative display of letters and numbers. The Korean team performed a remarkable fireworks display that captivated onlookers, leaving them in awe. As the stunning fireworks light up the night, you can feel a shared sense of wonder and amazement washing over the crowd. The Chinese team, named Sunny, also illuminated the night sky with beautiful fireworks, conveying messages under the theme, A Dream Comes True. With Chinese music on in the background, Team Sunny provided an experience that momentarily transported you to China. The colorful fireworks in the night sky were part of a spectacular performance, creating a memorable scene.
It was really beautiful. I didn't expect it to be like this kind of grand stage with so many people. The organization, I think it's very well organized for everyone just to move, keep moving, and everyone to be safe. So
it's so beautiful that I wish we had more opportunities like this.
A moment that goes beyond the fireworks above. It is a moment that unites us, captivates our hearts, and reminds us of the beauty in gazing up at the wonders of the world. 이은희, Arirang News.
Busan, meanwhile, is playing host to its annual film fiesta, and there's been quite a bit of applause for its continued efforts to provide a tangible platform for Asian screen productions. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin explains.
It's not just star-studded red carpets and prestigious awards that define the Busan International Film Festival. Since it began in 1996, BIF has had a clear mission: to promote Asian films to the world. This mission has gained more importance in recent years as Asian cinema, once overshadowed by Europe and Hollywood, has stepped into the limelight. Martin Derwan, founder and director of Europe's oldest Asian film festival, has witnessed this transformation firsthand.
I've been going to the Cannes Film Festival for 25 years, and these days I feel incredibly proud to see Asian films making their mark, winning awards at Cannes.
For Asian filmmakers and actors, BIF offers them a chance to showcase their creations to a global audience. Like the world-premiering movie The Scavenger of Dreams. This film shows the lives of a family of waste collectors in India and touches on bureaucracy, discrimination, and the wealth gap.
There's a section of society we, not consciously, but we just turn a blind eye. I just want, honestly to portray their life. And I always believe, for me, filmmaking is an exercise in empathy.
Another noteworthy debut, Doi Boy. Through the main character, who's a massage therapist at a gay massage parlor, the film sheds light on pressing socio-political issues in Thailand, like ethnic minorities, undocumented immigrants, and sex workers. As each Asian country has its unique cinematic color, more platforms like BIF are needed to showcase this rich diversity.
The varied original voices coming out of India, coming out of Hong Kong, coming out of Taiwan, coming out of Korea is mind-blowing. And it is a testament to the fact that there is an original lens that we have towards cinema that is being appreciated by the world. The way we've appreciated French New Wave, or German New Wave, or Iranian New Wave.
Yeah, as an actors or even for the film directors, we still need more support. But I think it's getting better since we can connect to Asian filmmakers or film festival, and we have more platform to share our story.
Just like every other year, this year's BIF serves as a gateway for these stories to reach a wider audience. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News, Busan.
Over in Australia, actions to ease emissions continue with technology that captures and stores under the sea carbon dioxide from the burning of natural gas. Our Yoon explains.
On the northernmost tip of Australia is the Darwin LNG terminal. The 13-story tall carbon capture facility has been running for 18 years. It works by spraying chemical absorbents on natural gas and separating carbon dioxide as residue. Through this process, roughly 600,000 tons of carbon dioxide is captured each year. In South Korea, until now, waste carbon dioxide has been evaporated into the air. But there is plan to decrease such carbon emissions by using an underwater carbon reservoir in partnership with Australia. This would help achieve carbon reduction targets and generate profits through emissions trading. Australia is heading a cross-border carbon capture and storage, or CCS, project that involves transporting the natural gas produced in the Barossa gas fields to the Darwin LNG plant, where the carbon dioxide is captured, and then sending the carbon dioxide to the Bayu-Undan fields in the Timor Sea. This process achieves energy development and carbon dioxide storage at the same time and saves on costs by using the pipelines that are already in place for natural gas transportation. South Korea's involvement in the project will help secure some 1.3 million tons of low-carbon LNG per year, as well as providing a location for carbon dioxide storage.
The LNG produced in the Barossa gas field will be exported to Korea to be used as the energy source for our blue hydrogen production. And the CO2 generated during the blue hydrogen production is then transported to Australia for CCS.
Such projects to further develop carbon storage are in full swing globally as CCS collaboration across borders is becoming more active.
CCS is critical to the future of our nations. We need to use every tool available in the toolbox to combat climate change and to decarbonise our economies. That the Northern Territory Government is a big supporter of the Barossa project and the CCS projects here.
South Korea has a shortage of carbon dioxide storage locations, and these latest cross-border CCS projects seem to be the solution. Yoon, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The United Kingdom and Ireland are set to be announced as the official joint hosts of Euro 2028. The announcement is slated for Tuesday local time at a UEFA meeting in Switzerland. The UK and Ireland bid is now all but guaranteed after Turkey withdrew its competing submission last week after being approved to join Italy's 2032 bid instead. The move means both bids are unopposed, but still need official UEFA approval. The 2028 tournament will be played in 10 stadiums across England, Scotland, the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland and Wales, with the latter three hosting a major football tournament for the first time. Staying in sports, the men's marathon world record was smashed over the weekend with a new time of 2 hours 35 seconds. The record-breaking run set on Sunday at the Chicago Marathon by Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum beats the previous best by more than 30 seconds. It was set in September last year by a fellow Kenyan, Eliud Kipchoge, at the Berlin Marathon. The 23-year-old said he had not originally planned to break the world record, but felt that he could do it toward the end of the run. The new world record comes after Kiptum broke the previous best time for the London Marathon in April. The Kenyan's compatriot Benson Kipruto came second, while Belgian Bashir Abdi finished third. And finally, eyes were firmly fixed on the sky as over 500 balloons lifted off from the U.S. state of New Mexico on Saturday as the 9-day Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta kicked off. Spectators watched as a variety of balloons, including ones shaped like animals and Star Wars characters, took to the air. The Fiesta's opening also saw the start of the Gordon Bennett gas balloon race, with teams still competing to get their balloons to travel the farthest distance across the U.S. The event got its start in 1972, with only 13 balloons taking part, while last year the event drew around 830,000 spectators. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. A chilly start has turned into a mild afternoon, and it is a fine autumn day under blue skies. Temperatures are hovering around the season norms in most parts of the country. But temperature gaps can be 10 to 15 degrees. Those in inland areas are having wider temperature gaps. You know, October is a month of change and brings ups and downs in the weather. And such conditions can weaken your immune system, so take good care of yourself so as not to come down with a cold. Afternoon highs are similar to yesterday, hovering in the low 20s, and Seoul and Chuncheon, Daejeon are topping out at 23 degrees Celsius under plenty of sunny skies in most parts of the country. Meanwhile, winds will get stronger in East Coast regions with a chance of few spotty showers in east of Gangwon-do province. Nice weather this week. Sunshine will be out most of the week. Just beware of wider temperature differences and try to take full advantage of the weather before it gets too chilly. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, that ends this edition of the Daily Report. But do stay with us for our panel session coming up right after this break.
입니다. 스탠바이. 스타트.
Hello, I'm Gustav Slamečka, Czech ambassador. Arirang TV is doing its best as a media diplomacy channel representing Korea by delivering current affairs information and news in a balanced voice. Everyone I meet can get news about Korea through Arirang, and we are thankful. I hope Arirang TV will continue to take the lead in delivering Korea's news to the world, and I hope it will be a channel for the world and Korea to synthesize. Resonating with the world, Arirang.
둘, 셋. 레이션! 안녕하세요, 오래오피입니다. I'm live!
저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해주시는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 없지. 텐션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.
좋아요.
Contour the world, simply contour. India, the United Kingdom, New Zealand. Woo!
I'm excited. You excited?
Of course.
Yeah.
Music, start.
Hangul Day on October 9th is a national holiday here in South Korea to celebrate the legacy of the Korean alphabet. So what is the significance of this particular day to scholars? What is behind the growing global interest in Hangul? And is Hangul well responding to its global demand? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Korea started this week, that is, with a public holiday to mark Hangul Day this past Monday. That was October 9th. And for more on the significance of this particular day, I have Professor Yoon at the University of Oxford live on the line. Professor Kah, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Very nice to meet you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Right. I also have Professor Ross King at the University of British Columbia with us. Professor King, as always, welcome to the show.
Nice to see you again.
Professor Kah, we'll begin with you. Let's begin then with your thoughts on the significance of Hangul Day for those teaching the Korean language and its culture, for scholars in general.
I think it's a great reminder, and of course, we have this Hangul Day that we celebrate each year. But it's a great reminder we have this tool to express and share our ideas easily. Originally, that was only for Koreans, but now that Hangul Korean language become much more globally used, so it's a great reminder we have a tool that can easily express and share beyond Koreans. So yeah, I think this is great. Yeah.
Right. And Professor King, what are your thoughts on the significance of this particular day?
For me, it always reminds me how Koreans tend to take Hangul and their Korean language for granted, sort of like the air that they breathe. And so actually Hangul Day, for me, gives Koreans at least one day per year to put down their English language textbooks for a moment and to remind themselves what a remarkably significant intellectual achievement the Korean alphabet was and still is. But I think also to reflect on how incredibly popular the Korean language has become outside of Korea, and at the same time, how kind of spectacularly unprepared Korea still is in so many ways for this newfound popularity of their language and their alphabet. So I think it's at a time like this on Hangul Day, this year, when Korean popular culture is enjoying such remarkable success, I think Hangul Day should prompt all of us, but especially Koreans, to try to think more strategically and more long-term about how to improve the infrastructure for teaching and learning Hangul and Korean.
Right, and staying with the popularity of Hangul, Professor Kah, an analysis by an online American platform for language learning shows that Korean surpassed Chinese to settle at 7th place last year. What do you believe are the broader implications of this particular finding, Professor Kah?
Yeah, I think this is quite funny because, for example, like when Squid Game viewers increase, that I look at Duolingo statistics that go together. So it's very interesting that this K culture and the consumers not only just consumes, but in a way that while you're watching the drama or consuming other K culture, they also got great interest in language itself. So for example, like they have great 2021, 2 years ago, we had about 7.8 billion tweets about K-pop. So people actually come and then talk about the language and the bits that they didn't understand, and also they learn the language. And I think it's really, in a way, I argue that Hangul could be, the next to Hallyu, then Hallyu 4.0. That in a way, like people interested in language and the alphabet, and I think it's really encouraging that that they just don't think about this as transitional. If they enjoy and consume, that's it. But then they also learn language, means that it could sustain, and it could the Korean cultural popularity and our influence could grow beyond this time. So I think this is very encouraging.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Professor King, simply speaking then, how popular is the Korean language and how do you explain the increased interest in learning it?
Well, at virtually every level where we teach Korean outside of Korea, I'm speaking for North America, whether it's K to 12 or university level, we're all turning students away. We've been turning students away from our programs for many years now, and that's just because our programs are full. We don't have enough capacity. We don't have the teaching staff to accommodate. There's just way more demand than we can handle and way more applicants than we have places. And that's true right across North America, where I teach here in Canada at the University of British Columbia and at the University of Toronto in the East. We've been literally turning away hundreds of students for the last few years from first year Korean, just because we can't handle this increased demand, and it's all because of Hallyu and K-pop, basically.
Professor Kat, what can you share with us then about the interest in the Korean language among those in the UK and elsewhere in Europe then?
I think it's very similar to the North America and actually globally. But I found what's very interesting is that the fandom learners, those who are following the K-pop and K-culture and learning the language, the sort of interesting sort of the range and diversity of those group. Of course, K-pop fandom mostly young people, but then now because of drama, they also have the fandom learners who are not like young people. So in a way, it's a really interesting phenomena that impacts age insensitive, like what I mean by diverse population group to learn language. And I think this is something the Hallyu enabled people to learn language, and it's really happening all over the world, Europe and UK. So I have few workshop example that I thought they mainly young people, but then I also found many people who their 30s, 40s, they started learning Korean because simply they watch drama, and watching drama is also something like, not only enjoying the content, but it enables them to have some sort of verbal footage from the drama, and then, they become interested in the language and word itself. So it's, in a way, Hallyu itself is promoting the Korean language in UK and Europe.
Right, I see. And Professor Kat, is Korean considered an easy language to learn for foreigners, do you think?
I don't think so. It's it's considered as one of the most difficult language, and the reason is because of pragmatic complexity. And in order to learn different registers, you need to be exposed to the real situation. But so you have to basically come to Korea to learn, how it's used. But actually, drama enables virtual immersion. So people watching drama actually able to quickly pick up those pragmatic complexity. So I think it's kind of changing the dimension or perception. So it has been always considered as one of the most difficult languages to learn. But because of drama and virtual immersion, they experience young people. So they don't really think this is too difficult. They can easily master different registers by watching drama. So it also adds a different dimension to language learning.
Right, and staying with the same question, Professor King, what do you think? Do you suppose Korean is an easy language to learn for foreigners?
Well, being a foreigner myself, I would say it is definitely not easy to learn, and I'm 42 years and counting, and I still find it difficult. So yeah, it's a lifelong commitment to do it to a high level for sure. The issue is that there are still very few opportunities for learners to go beyond that first year of study, where that's where all the demand is right now. We're turning students away from first year, but then after 1 or 2 years, they're basically kind of dropping out. And I think this is something that all of us as Korean language educators and that Korea as a country needs to kind of really turn its attention to how do we retain more of these learners that are coming to us because of their excitement for Korean popular culture. And I think that's kind of where my focus is right now, is how do we keep them?
Right, and before we delve into that, Professor King, do you suppose Hallyu is the main reason then behind the surge in interest in Hangul?
No question, absolutely. That's why we're seeing all these new enrollments, and so that's a really positive thing. But again, what Hallyu has also done, I think it's not all positive. It has also essentially exposed the many weaknesses in our infrastructure for teaching Korean language to foreigners, both inside Korea and outside Korea. And I think, again, another distortion that Hallyu has introduced into Korean studies is that we're now seeing more and more that when new professorships come up in Korean studies, they tend to be focused on K-pop or on Hallyu, on Korean media. But Korea is not just about K-pop. So, I really want to stress that Hallyu is great in terms of all the increased demand, but we need to really do some traffic control and some long-term planning to make sure that we can keep the students in the system and that they learn that Korea is more than just Hallyu.
Right, and staying with what Professor King has just said, Professor Ka, do you also agree that current instructional responses with regard to Korean are failing to meet the rising global demand?
Yeah, I agree. So basically, I think sort of we may be, able to provide the first, stage care, but continuity matters. And as Professor King said, that it's important for us to be able to help them to maintain that interest, as well as helping those the initial learners. So and sort of also, I think. People, we hear this message that learners, waiting in the list. As Sejong school have a big, long waiting list, but so there are huge interest. So it's important to meet their demands, but also to help the learners who are learning, to sustain their learning and to help them to maintain their learning. And in order to do that, I think the most important thing is that, as Professor King said, other things, K-cultural impact important, but we also need to realize that language is at the foundation of this K-culture and K-wave. And also, probably, if I add one more thing, is that, it's new generation language learning in itself has transformed over the last 5-6 years. Learners and students learn using the apps and new technology. So AI would be our new new challenge, how we incorporate the digital technologies into our classroom and how we kind of able to help them to learn better. That would be our remaining challenge.
Right, and speaking about approaching this language, this teaching method, Professor King, I believe you founded a Korean language and culture course at Concordia Language Villages, which we talked about earlier this year, I believe. Professor King, could you tell us a bit more about this particular course and how does it seek to engage students?
Well, so it's targeted at K to 12, so students before they're at university age. And I think the key point is that it doesn't happen within the four walls of a traditional classroom. So it's 24/7, residential, living together, it's immersion, and it's all about learning Korean in a community. And what that does is it creates an incredible enthusiasm about the language and culture, and it is heavily cultural because it's not in the four walls of a classroom, so that the cultural aspects are kind of organically included in what the villagers learn in the village. You can't, any good language education is going to include culture in its program. The problem, again, is that there just aren't enough opportunities for these villagers once they go to the language village and graduate from high school. There's so few opportunities still to continue their studies once they go to university. And there are also really very few incentives in the form of scholarships for them, for example, to go study in Korea for a year, this kind of thing. So it's this kind of, I guess, creating for our learners a road that they can see, a path forward that they say, oh, if I stick with this language, there's other places and other programs for me to go to, and ultimately I'll be able to go to Korea. This, I think, is still a real weakness for Korean language education, and that's why I think we're still seeing so many drop out after the first year or two of, sort of very introductory learning.
Right, I see. Professor King, this is an impromptu question, but I'm aware that last year you were here as a visiting scholar at Sungkyunkwan University. Was your trip perhaps aimed at trying to seek a kind of connection between those interested in learning Korean in America and the programs here in Korea at Sungkyunkwan University?
Well, yes, except if you think of Korean language education as a kind of pipeline, the language village, which is for kids from ages 7 to 18, is sort of the entryway into that pipeline. Then you've got university. But the program at Sungkyunkwan University, which is an inter-university center for advanced academic Korean, is really the very end point near the exit of the pipeline, where these are very advanced students that are needing to learn Korean as researchers and as scholars, and therefore have to learn academic Korean. They need to learn Hanja, they need to learn, sinographs or Chinese characters. Sometimes they need to learn Hanmun. And so this is sort of the very I guess, top end of the proficiency scale, where we're also, I think, very poorly served still for foreign learners who really need to learn Korean for very high proficiency professional and academic reasons. So I'm kind of doing both of those things, and the Sungyun-Gwan project is really the higher end.
Right, I see. And speak about the higher end. Professor Kia, I wonder, how important is Hanmun in learning Hangul, do you suppose, for foreigners?
I think sort of Hanmun will enable them to read the text that they, for example, like, those are learning the old pre-modern text in this Korean studies, they will need Hanmun. But I think it's sort of what we have in more or less contemporary Korea, we have, rather than Hanmun, we have Hanjao, which you can actually have without the knowledge of Hanmun. So I encourage them to learn Hanmun, but actually, very much if you're learning Korean, they would, I don't think they read a lot of Hanmun, the Chinese characters. But then many of my students come from Chinese and Japanese background, so they kind of know Hanmun, and it helps them to understand the background and have more enriched cultural knowledge. But I don't think that will be the requirement for learning Korean language.
Right, I see. Professor King, you've spoken about the challenges out there to further promoting Hangul in the global arena. And that all being said, what more can you tell us about the existing challenges and perhaps some possible or potential countermeasures to these challenges?
Sure. Well, so I think Korean language education is probably unique in the world in its really heavy dependence on Korean funding for its very existence. And it's also unique, I think, in its near total dependence on South Korean government funding to survive. So for me, the biggest challenge is getting away from our crippling dependence on just two South Korean organizations, namely the Korea Foundation and the Academy of Korean Studies. And the funding that they provide is welcome, it's helpful, but it's not competitive with what other major economies like Japan and Germany have done for their languages in the world. And it's nowhere close to what we need for meaningful change and improvement at this current moment where Korean is so popular. So, and furthermore, when you're taking money from Korean government organizations, you always have the same problems of bureaucracy, inflexibility, lack of imagination, and nationalism. So what we need is to diversify and bring in NGOs. We need, the corporations should be helping with all of this. And so far, Korean corporations have a very poor track record of helping anybody with Korean studies outside of Korea. Private foundations need to be brought into the mix. And in North America, where I am, I think the Korean community should be stepping up its support for Korean studies as well. So basically, Korea needs to be doing more aggressively what Japan did for over 3 decades for Japanese studies and Japanese language education, which is to build an infrastructure that will survive if and when Hallyu crashes and burns.
Right. And Professor Kia, what more can you add with regard to these challenges and potential countermeasures?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, I really second back up what Professor King said, but also I think it's important to actually to have the infrastructure or, for example, like, I'm in the UK, but UK government or Department of Education to be interested in Korean or, include Korean as one of the foreign languages. I think this is kind of important step that promoting Korean language is not like all done by Korean government and Korean scholars, but we have to kind of raise the awareness from the local government and their educational authority, the importance of this language and what are sort of educational and overall benefit it can bring, not only for some K-pop fandoms, but in general society, what language learning itself could bring. And so I think it's important that we also talk and able to engage with the educational authorities in the local places like UK or Europe or North America, so that actually the authority, educational authority in the country may have the responsibility and take more lead on Korean language education than South Korean government.
Right. And in the meantime, then, Professor King, speaking as a foreign scholar of the Korean language, what perhaps was your secret to mastering, if I may, Hangul?
Hangul is easy to master. It's the Korean language that's the problem. And if if I can go back to something that Professor Kjar said about Hanja, and I hope my Korean colleagues won't kill me for this, and I hope that King Sejong will not be turning over in his grave, because basically here we are talking about Hangul Day, but I think if you really want to learn Korean to a really high level, you have to learn Hanja, and you have to at least study them, and you have to learn, you know, the Hanja, the Sino-Korean vocabulary that goes with them. So it's one big package, of which Hangul is just one small piece, and Hangul, as I say, is a brilliantly designed system that fits Korean like a glove. But it's not the same thing as the Korean language, which is a lifetime project. So we need to keep building that infrastructure for both teaching Hangul, teaching Korean language, and for those advanced learners who really want to reach a high level are also learning Hanja systematically.
Right, of course. As always, Professor King, thank you so much for your insights today. And Professor Kjar, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, well, on that note, we end Tuesday's edition of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching.